In a typical church, discussions about heavier matters might be the subject for a session in the pastor's study. This is true even in the catacomb chapel of St. Uriel, no matter how different our ministries might be from your typical parish. And let's see what we might find in a very different pastor's study.
Merry meet and blessed be. Depending on how you got here, I'm Aidan Odinson, High Priest of the Temple of Gaia, or Bishop Cal Lippitt of the Universal Episcopal Church and Universal Gnostic Fellowship. Either way, welcome. We have a problem. And we have a problem right now concerning the forthcoming elections. Now, let me tell you about a little provision. I want to call it a strange provision, but it's a little provision, kind of a loophole in the tax code. Churches are automatically tax-exempt. Sort of. But if they want to remain tax-exempt, then they have to follow certain rules. Now, besides things such as taxable, unrelated income and all that sort of stuff, there's some stuff about politics. That a church is supposed to stay out of partisan politics. Now, that means, among other things, that I can't get up into the pulpit and tell you that you're supposed to vote for one candidate or another. No, I'm not allowed to do that. However, I can express my opinion as a private individual, as long as I make sure that people know that I'm doing it as a private individual, not as a member of a clergy or anything like that. And I can address issues. I better address issues. That's a big part of what all this is about, isn't it? So if suddenly a local merchant decides to put up a sign in front of his store saying white only, or something like that, yeah, I better be able to speak about that. Or if a local police department seems to be using its speed traps as a way to raise money, or any of those other things. Now, the problem comes, of course, when a candidate makes an issue or becomes an issue. What do I do then? Well, the answer is I have to, how do I say it? I can't just ignore it, but I can address the issue independent of the candidate. I might say that one or more candidates, without naming the names, is saying something. I can't, but I can't say that. Well, I do well to do without naming the name of the candidate. Let you figure that out for yourself. After all, you have access to television, you have access to the newspapers and that sort of thing. I would expect you to be able to figure this out. I will not spoon feed you. We had one candidate who appears to want to deport Muslims, and while they're here in this country, make them wear some kind of identification, kind of reminds me of stories I've heard of back in the 30s and the 40s in Germany, when Hitler and his people had certain categories of people wear certain identifications. There was the six-pointed star that certain people were supposed to wear. There was the pink triangle that certain other people were supposed to wear. And there were a few others too, yeah. And I'm sure that this candidate could make use of the nice chart that's probably available in the archives to figure out what he wants to do. But I say no. Another candidate is reported to have said that he wants to deport Muslims and atheists. Now, I'm not exactly a fan of atheism, but I am a fan of religious freedom, even when somebody's religious choice does not agree with mine. And to my mind, religion is a matter of choice. Even if you're going to the same church, mosque, or whatever that your parents went to, and that your grandparents went to, and that your great-grandparents went to, for each individual, religion, as I see it, is a matter of choice. And so, if somebody chooses to be a Muslim, that's their choice. And they shouldn't have to be deported because of it. I can't help but remember when, during the last Bush administration, Wiccans had to fight and were ready to go to court, and were preparing a court case to force the Veterans Administration to allow the pentacle on veterans' tombstones. Yeah. There were crosses. There were Stars of David. There were over 30 different symbols, but not the pentacle. And the Veterans Administration did various ways of trying to dodge it, including trying to say that they were revising. Well, I'm told that in the discovery process they discovered that some people in the Veterans Administration were trying to please President Bush, who had made a comment when he was governor of Texas, talking about the Fort Hood Open Circle, that he didn't believe that Wicca was a legitimate religion and that the military ought to do something about this kind of activity. Now, excuse me, but the military promptly replied to then Governor Bush that it was a matter of freedom of religion. It was a matter of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So, but it took summonses and hiring lawyers and that sort of thing for it to happen. And now, I also know that deep in the military regulations there's a provision that no religious activity is allowed on a military base without chapel approval. So, well, first off, in the entire Department of Defense, there is no such person as a pagan or a Wiccan chaplain. And that can cause problems. Basically, any religious activity that is not associated directly with an assigned chaplain on the base is pretty much in jeopardy. Especially if it's a faith that the assigned chaplains don't fully grasp. And, as a matter of fact, that little thing was brought to bear on me some years ago, back in the 70s. That time it was due to a faction fight in a mainstream Christian denomination. So I can see the potential. I can see what can happen. Especially when somebody discovers that somebody's having a group together in a barracks room or in a room in the bachelor officer quarters or someplace like that. That's bad enough, but it gets even crazier. It gets even crazier when a candidate claims to have been chosen by God and a certain father of a certain candidate has said that God has chosen his son and given his wife a vision. Oh, no, I'm not kidding. And that's not the only one who's supposedly heard God's voice tell him. And that's not all. Do you remember a couple of shows ago when I spoke of how certain parts of the Old Testament were out of date? Per the word of Jesus himself in Luke 16, verse 16. Yeah, Luke 16:16, very easy to find. But yeah, they're citing things in Deuteronomy and Leviticus as if they were supposed to be current Christian doctrine, when Jesus himself said that they were valid up until John the Baptist. So guess what? And what are we going to do? I recall Isaac Bonowitz. He and I corresponded a few times, and he included a few quotes from me from some stuff that I'd written in his book on pagan male spirituality. And he, on a number of occasions, mentioned that he had had visions of when we were going to have actual places of worship. You know, brick and mortar or whatever buildings with lawns and parking lots and maybe full-time clergy. Certainly people to take care of the place. That'd be kind of wonderful. Not just because it's a place where we know we can come and we can come together and share, and it can be kind of a home away from home for some of us. Not just that, but it's a signal to the rest of the world that we aren't going anywhere. We're not going away. We're here. Deal with it. We're here, and we're not asking for anything more than what others accept as a matter of course. It might also be a way for us to make friends, after all. We might not be the only group in that kind of a situation. I remember what happened in Beebe, Arkansas, when Seeker's Temple tried to establish themselves there. I'm wondering what would happen. I didn't see a Catholic church there. I didn't see an Episcopalian church there. I wonder what would happen if one of them showed up there, or any of a few others that I can think of. So yeah, good opportunity for networking. And at the same time, we've got to make some provision for being able to function underground, much like our spiritual ancestors, who, I don't like the isolation of covens where you don't even know if your next door neighbor is one of us. Or like the early Christians who were forced to worship in the catacombs. We need to be visible wherever and whenever we can. But we also need to be able to reach out to those who might be isolated, or who might feel isolated, or who can't otherwise come together with us, and for those in persecution. Pagans, Wiccans, other faiths, and even those who follow Yeshua Bar Joseph, but in a manner more in keeping with the original teachings. They all might want to consider some of these thoughts. Well, yeah, I'm not here going to be advocating a specific course of action or outlining a plan of action. At least not yet, because I hope it's not yet time for that. Except for one. One right now is absolutely mandatory, and that is we've got to keep our eyes open and be prepared to defend what is supposed to be a basic right for every one of us. Blessed be. This has been a presentation of the Wise Ones Net. Merry part and blessed be.